Hi, everybody. I have Chocolate, who is almost asleep, and Fluffy, who now seems to like, when the lights come on, hangs around. So they both seem to like doing this on Wednesday nights, and I love having them as a start in this strange, evolving world that we are in. And I found something that I thought I would share for those of you out there who are cat lovers. And it is that the Persian cat, this is Fluffy, comes from the Persian side, and Chocolate comes from the Himalayan side. The Himalayan is really referred to as the Himalayan Persian because it was a breed or subbreed of a long-haired type Persian in the beginning, and they ended up being crossed with a Siamese, and that's how, if you could see, get his eyes open, you'd see they are the color of the sky. There are some days when he sits in the sun and those eyes glow just like the blue of the sun, and he has darker eyes. Well, I didn't really know until today, and I just wondered, what is the relationship of the Persian cat? And it turns out that scientists studying DNA have found that the Persian DNA cat goes back to the Middle East around 130,000 years ago. And those findings that are recent, just of the last 3 years of DNA studies, they turn over what used to be sort of a traditional view that cats somehow came in with the Egyptians 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. And in reading about the fact that these two guys that I love so much, they represent, both of them, the Persian Fluffy and the Himalayan Chocolate. They have a genetic relationship, but that their ancestors go back 130,000 years. And because you all know that I've been exposed to so much information about genetic manipulation of already evolving DNA in Earth life by other intelligences, that there's even the bigger mystery. The wonder of cats. Did they come because alien intelligences were here 100,000, 200,000, 270 million years? And are they the mystery and the intelligence that reflects something else in this universe? That I'm glad they brought them here. And I'm going to put them down because I have something else wondrous to show you. I love you guys. Oh, I love you. You go and play. Today, you all know how much I love and fight for light. That's what's on my t-shirts. Down with entropy, down with death, down with darkness, up with light. Well, here is the headline today that when I saw it, staggering new images of the sun are the most detailed ever taken. I clicked and learned that a new solar telescope is called the Daniel Inouye, after the deceased U.S. Senator from Hawaii. This new telescope has been able to record the highest resolution images of the sun's surface ever taken. It's like watching kernels of gold corn undulating as if on liquid, but we know our sun is mostly hydrogen and helium plasma. Science Alert reports, quote, "These moving blobs that you see are known as granules. They're the tops of convection cells in the solar plasma, with hot plasma rising in the middle and then falling back down around the edges as it moves outward and cools," close quote. It's hard to believe, but each of these granules that you can see can be up to 994 miles in diameter, and that is wider than the state of Texas, each of those granules. And there are trillions of them on our dear sun that keeps us warm and Earth alive. The Inouye Solar Telescope director Thomas Rimmel says, quote, "It's all about the magnetic field. To unravel the sun's biggest mysteries, we have to not only be able to clearly see these tiny structures from 93 million miles away here on Earth, but very precisely to measure their magnetic field strength and direction near the surface and trace the field as it extends out into the million-degree corona, the outer atmosphere of the sun," close quote. Now, the cats and this just amazing, going right to this granular structure of our sun for the first time, it makes me feel real joy. But I've also been struggling with sadness, as I have been trying to keep up with the Wuhan coronavirus news for the past week. After I first reported to you last Wednesday that the total confirmed human infections across mainland China at that time, only 1 week ago, was 509, with a death toll of 17. Well, today, only 7 days later, on Wednesday, January 29, 2020, the official death toll is now up to 17 to 170 in China, with 7,700 confirmed cases. That's a jump 1 week from 509 to 7,700 and rising steadily. That is now already more than the SARS pandemic cases number in China back in 2002 to 2003. This Wuhan coronavirus is at least affecting now in China, in Wuhan and in other areas, at least 12 cities China has quarantined, and those dozen cities are equivalent to 50 million people that are now quarantined and unable to come and go in those cities. Nothing on that scale has ever happened before in human medical history. But current medical opinion is this new coronavirus, strangely, is less deadly than the SARS was, but is becoming more contagious. An ominous development was announced in the New England Journal of Medicine on January 28th. It's a documented case that the Wuhan coronavirus can spread between people even when the first infected person doesn't show any symptoms. The virus was transmitted from a Wuhan father who had no symptoms, traveled to Vietnam, visiting his 27-year-old son, and the son became very ill, and the coronavirus was confirmed. That means human-to-human transmission, with the person getting sick not having been the traveler to China. He was in Vietnam. Today, British Airways and Air Canada suspended all direct flights to and from mainland China, but British Airways is still flying in and out of Hong Kong. The U.S. has expanded fever monitoring to 20 major airports, while the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has confirmed 5 U.S. infections in Snohomish County, Washington, Chicago, Illinois, Orange County and Los Angeles County in California, and Maricopa County in Arizona. The Wuhan coronavirus symptoms of fever, nausea, and trouble breathing are occurring now in most people infected between 2 to 14 days after the viral exposure. That is why some people without any symptoms could be carrying and spreading the virus. And that provoked UK public health expert Neil Ferguson at London's Imperial College to estimate that by now, the cumulative number of known and unknown already infected people as of January 26th could be as high as 100,000 people or even more, meaning they're there, it's under the surface, but we just don't know it yet. The World Health Organization's Emergency Committee will meet again tomorrow, January 30th, for the third time in a week to evaluate whether WHO should declare the rapidly spreading Wuhan coronavirus is an international emergency. They have had 2 meetings. They have said we can't declare it yet because the death toll and the case are not big enough. But with this huge change in just the last 24 hours, there is some expectation that tomorrow, on the 30th of January, they will finally declare what is happening from China and spreading around the world as an international emergency, but it has not been declared so yet. Locked down since Wednesday, residents in Wuhan, where the new coronavirus first erupted, people were lined up at hospitals with coughs and fevers and speaking angrily that there aren't enough doctors or hospital beds or masks to handle the crisis there. This video from a Chinese messaging app, WeChat, was released by the social media monitoring agency Storyful, which says the footage was taken on January 23, 2020, by a nurse at the Wuhan Red Cross Hospital. A translation was posted at the alleged nurse speaking about the scenes that she was capturing on her cell phone. Quote, "People were lined up outdoors and filled the hall and the lobby. 3 bodies have been lying here the whole morning. Some people are already dead. Until now, nobody's come to take care of them. Blood infusion rooms and observation wards were all overcrowded. Doctors and nurses are working in these conditions. I've just looked for the person in charge. There's no leadership, and even if there were, they wouldn't be able to solve this." Close quote. The video was posted to Weibo, which is similar to Twitter, but then it was removed, leaving only a Twitter message. So we are sharing this tonight as one of the few messages that has gotten out live, in the sense that it was a recording from Wuhan, and it may reflect the kind of internal chaos that is there. God bless everyone. Yesterday, January 28, 2020, I received a press release entitled Unknowns About Coronavirus from Dr. Jane Orient, MD. She is Executive Director of the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons and President and founder of Physicians for Civil Defense, founded in Tucson, Arizona in 1991. I called her, and she wanted to talk about her growing concerns. What is your perspective of how serious this is, and could it lead to a global pandemic?
I think it's very serious. It could be contained. You know, the Ebola epidemic was contained. The SARS epidemic was contained. It could be, but the fact is that we are probably no better prepared for a true worldwide lethal pandemic like the flu pandemic of 1918 than we were back in 1918. We don't have an effective treatment. We don't have a vaccine. And even though we spent $80 billion on programs that are supposed to get us prepared, we really are not very well prepared in the sense of having a surge capacity for hospitals or for medical equipment like protective gear or for medical personnel, or a really good, reliable, rapid system for disseminating supplies like vaccines or drugs if we happen to have some that would be effective, or really for doing the best rapid tracking of contagion and making decisions about what we need to do to contain it. When China says it has only so many confirmed cases, that's only the cases that they had diagnostic kits to diagnose. There are lots and lots of cases that have not been diagnosed because they don't have the test kits to do it. To get a test in the United States, the only place that you can get it is from the CDC. You've got to ship your specimen to Atlanta. They're supposed to have a network of laboratories to send the necessary reagents to, but that has not been done with this. I should point out that this is the biggest quarantine effort in human history. We haven't really tried to quarantine a city, a whole city, any time since the Middle Ages and the days of the Black Plague. And China's got more than a dozen cities under strict quarantine where people cannot get in or out by bus, train, or airplane.
50 million people right now are in cities that are in lockdown.
Yes.
What do you think would happen if 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now that we have in New York, Miami, San Francisco, LA, the same increasing numbers of cases up to 5,000, 6,000 is happening in China now, and the U.S. government having to face locking large cities down? Is it even possible?
Well, it's going to be very difficult because of the civil disorder. I mean, most people don't have enough food or supplies to even get them through a few days. And so one of the messages civil defense has had is, just think there are all kinds of bad things that can happen that can interfere with your routine, but shelter in place is going to be the only thing the government can recommend. Can you stay home for 2 weeks?
Good question, and no American wants to hear that.
Well, they don't think ahead, they don't shop ahead.
In the SARS epidemic that is being compared to the current panic because it was a coronavirus also, which may have come from swine then, and this one may come from swine or snakes, or they're still trying to figure that out. But the SARS pandemic, it killed 800 people, and I think that there were something like 8,000 cases.
Right, and a lot of the people who do have cases may need to be on ventilators. Do we have enough ventilators? Do we have enough ICUs to keep them alive while their lungs are hopefully recovering? We just don't have much in the way of backup equipment here or extra hospital beds. If hospitals are running near 100% capacity, then what are they really going to do when they're flooded with patients? By the way, if you have fairly mild symptoms and there's an epidemic like this going on, the hospital emergency room is probably the last place you want to be unless your life is truly threatened, because if you don't have bad disease when you go there, you might have it by the time you leave.
Right. They made that point about what's happening in Wuhan in China, that all of these people crowding in at the hospitals is transmitting the disease.
Right. We don't have proper masks even now. If you try to order N95 respirator masks from the medical supply company, you'll find out that they are out of stock. They are back ordered. But remember, these are RNA viruses. They are unstable with the RNA. When it duplicates itself, makes a lot of mistakes. And these can be like mutations, so they can enable a virus that formerly just attacked bats that now jumps species so it can attack human beings. In the course of the epidemic, it can change so that it becomes much more virulent than it was to start with, or it can become much milder than it was to start with. It is genuinely unpredictable to a large extent.
What is it that you would hear as a doctor in the next few days that would say to you, oh, no, this is really taking off in a bad way?
Well, I think it might be that the hospitals are having to turn away ambulances because they don't have beds, because their ICU beds are all full. I hope that the public health authorities would be giving people some good advice, like stay away from crowds, stay home, wash your hands frequently, scrubbing them for 20 minutes, disinfect surfaces, be careful about currency because the virus can stay infective on paper money for days or weeks.
So it's a serious, serious time. And since China makes so many products for American manufacturers, such as Apple, one China supply chain executive warned today, quote, the coronavirus situation in China could affect the planned production schedules for many, many companies. And in fact, China's Hubei province, that has been really hit hard by the Wuhan coronavirus, it has two main manufacturing centers in Henan and Guangdong provinces. Each province had more than 100 confirmed cases of the coronavirus as of 2 days ago. And Shanghai has now over 50 confirmed cases. This has provoked Apple to close 2 more China stores on the coronavirus worries. And Apple now has closed down for the foreseeable future 3 of its retail locations, worrying about this spread of this coronavirus. And I will try to stay on top of it. Everybody is covering it. But what I'm trying to do is to keep my eye on the comparison to when I was covering, it would seem like every day for a month when SARS broke back in 2002. It kept going for a year. What really, it's almost eerie, scary, that we've been in the situation now with another coronavirus out of Wuhan, and that it's only been about 3 weeks to a month. And the numbers are up where SARS was after a year. I don't know what this means. I don't think that we move to fear, but the more education that we can get, the more I can help bring education from people who are medical experts to you every Wednesday. I will keep trying as long as this keeps accelerating. My prayer is that the doctors that are now saying that they are working on a vaccine because they now know what this particular coronavirus they're dealing with, can they accelerate the production of a vaccine? No one really knows. So I'm going to tell you what my mom always used to say, but right now it could be a matter of staying well. Wash your hands constantly if you are going outside or going anywhere. Wash your hands. Try to use hot water and use some kind of soap and get one of those for the antibacteria and put it on your hands. And seriously, it could make a difference. Not that is an answer to the coronavirus, but it does help to keep the spread of germs down, and we all need to be concentrating on this. And to pray for all of the people everywhere across the other side of the world where something has come so fast and is raging so quickly. Now, I'd like to shift gears back to the communication from me and Brad and our dear Peggy and Eric, that we put out an announcement to see on a list what would you most like for me to report about. And Peggy just told me before we went on the air live that 55% of you, over half, would like me to do a report about the Men in Black syndrome, which has been associated going all the way back to the 1930s in the field of unidentified aerial phenomena and the possibility of some sort of another intelligence interacting with our planet, whether it pops in and out from another dimension. That is becoming more and more prevalent. And that the Men in Black, are they even from inside this universe? And if they are not, if they have been coming into people's lives since the 1930s from another dimension, it makes them even more fascinating. So I look forward to March 18th, that Wednesday. That will be my live stream right before we go into the equinox, the spring equinox. And I will devote that program to the best cases and the best knowledge that I have about the Men in Black. And I want to hug all of you everywhere around this whole planet. A week ago, I asked Peggy if she would give from me to you a personal message inquiry. Could as many of you as possible subscribe so we could break through 130,000. And I just learned we are at 129,809. We're so close. Thank you, thank you. And for all of you who are here at this live stream right now, who are not subscribing, please subscribe tonight, subscribe tomorrow, tell everybody you know. And the reason is, it has to do with the political weight of shows that are on YouTube. It would help me so much if we could just keep going and breaking and increasing the totals that we represent at the Earthfiles YouTube live stream. And tonight, for all of you listening, I think we could do it while I'm on the air. We could break through 130,000. That number will tick up, and then we'll have another goal. So thank you for everybody who got us to here, and now we just need more enthusiasm to get us through 130,000. I would like us to be at 500,000, a million. I got an email last week, and it was done sort of tongue-in-cheek, but it was such a lovely email, and said, if the Kardashians can get 35 million, Linda, let's take you over 1 million. I'm there. Let's do it. It would mean that you are the ones around the world. You are paying attention. You are seeking out information that is a contradiction to what we've been taught for thousands of years about our relationship to this universe. We're at a revolutionary moment. Help me go through into this revolution, making Earthfiles larger and larger and larger. I love you so much. Thank you for getting us here tonight. And now Peggy is standing by to bring me your questions tonight, and I promise I will try to do them as quickly as I can so I can do more. But I also want, as I say that there are people who write me all the time and say, you always say you work from the inside out, and you carry a lot of knowledge from a lot of years of investigations. That needs to be heard too. So tonight I will try to do it short. In other upcoming programs, I'll revert back to my inside out to you that sometimes takes a while. So thank you for your patience. I will try to go both ways, and tonight as fast as I can. Peggy.
Linda, first I'd like to thank our super chats tonight. So Twin Aries, Reality Not Fiction, Peter Van Horn the Fourth, Minnesota, and Rachel Dalihan. Thank you so much for your super chats.
Oh, absolutely. It all helps. Thank you.
Let's just stay on topic for this first question. Do you believe the coronavirus will reach pandemic proportions worldwide?
I'll tell you, the doctor and I talked yesterday when we did that recording, Dr. Orient, in Tucson. And I think that she feels from inside sources, she said this, that inside sources told her yesterday that they were expecting before this week was out that the World Health Organization would, in another meeting, this is their third tomorrow, that they will, because of this acceleration, this has been going rapidly into, I guess you could say almost exponential rates as each 24 hours goes by. And so tomorrow, at least the insiders are saying that they're expecting the World Health Organization will declare it as an international medical emergency. It's my understanding that when that occurs, that there are different federal guidelines and different relationships that occur between the World Health Organization and nations. And they don't do it easily. So tomorrow, if this is what the vote is going to come down, it means it's just exactly like my discussion with Dr. Orient, that the insiders are very, very concerned And when you look at the fact that President Xi in China just a few days ago speaking, and he is not a person that you would expect because they always try to keep everything frothy, positive. He said this was a grave, grave danger. That was from the president of China. So it's not clear how dangerous this could become even further. And one other note, part of tomorrow, there are these questions that are emerging from the media everywhere and the public, rightfully so. We had 200 or 300 people come back to the United States from Wuhan. They arrived at something like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, East Coast time. And my understanding is that everybody coming back from Wuhan, whether it's the United States, whether it's Australia, whether it's England, wherever it is, they're now trying to put at least 14 days, I think. They don't like to say that. They say in an unspecified holding. I think they're going to keep holding people that are coming back in airplanes. They're going to see for 14 days, do any of the Americans who have been being returned or the Australians and so forth, do they manifest symptoms in 14 days, being held still essentially quarantined from coming back into the United States? And that makes some sense, and they will be held. I believe it's going to be a military base. So that means that this also, the gear shifted when they decided to do that. And we'll be seeing and hearing what is happening now from these groups of people that have come back to their countries from Wuhan and are being held to see if they get sick. Okay?
So staying on this topic, somebody made a good point in the chat, just saying, what about the animals? If this virus started with animals, why aren't we hearing about a lot of animals dying?
It is a very good question. It is not even clear what the source of this current Wuhan coronavirus is. In SARS, it was genetically confirmed that SARS in 2002 to 2003 came from swine, pigs. Now we are at 2020. And probably like I have, some of you have seen that there has been information, I've read a lot of it, that it came from snakes. Again, it is another genetic argument, but no one in the science alert system or in the journals that normally are the ones that you wait for them to come out with what is called chain of custody, verified, confirmed, all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed. When those journals have something to publish about what is the source, the proven source with chain of custody for this particular coronavirus, I think that's when it will be more clear. Right now, there's still arguments for swine. There are still arguments perhaps for the snake. And why don't those animals themselves get sick? Because all over the world, part of nature, have been that there are viruses, bacteria, and now we know about coronaviruses that come through the RNA, that they evolve in the petri dish of the life force or form that sustains them. And that's where they are hosted. Then, if they break out of that, and we are, say, a life form on this earth, and we have no immunity, the animal in which it evolved and worked its way as a support system, we're the ones, we don't have any immunity to it. And that's why it can develop in pigs, it can develop in something else, and not kill those animals, because they're the carriers and the host. But we are the ones who end up, depending upon what the transmission is. That's part of what's being studied. Transmission, you can see how farmers, they would be carrying pigs all the time. Well, why is it that we had the wave of SARS in 2002 to 2003, and it got stamped out with really, really hard and harsh measures that were taken to contain and get rid of and slaughter a lot of pigs. So now we're at that stage where everybody's trying to see, can we contain it? Can we contain it? While other scientists are right now trying to come up with a vaccine based on what they've learned about the genetic makeup and what was the chain of custody beginning source. So we're still not in a position to have those answers yet. I'll keep reporting, though. Whatever I can learn, I'll keep reporting. Okay.
We have a teacher who is in the chat, and he would like to know what is important to transmit to students, young people around the world, when they really want to know the truth and they're willing to listen. What should he be teaching?
It depends on the subject. If you took ancient history, from my point of view and others who have been in the what is the truth about our relationship with this universe, having to do with other intelligences and the growing amount of information that is coming to me both through whistleblowers as well as people who are themselves in touch with agencies and know that our ancient history, it was full-blood extraterrestrials, and they were here millions of years ago, and that the entire global above ground, below ground network of pyramids, they were not built by humans dragging heavy limestone on wheeled carts. That is some deflection whenever that came into our history. I think, without question, if you're saying, what can we teach our young people about what the real truth of this planet is, that's one of the most fertile grounds, is to go back into ancient history and come into it through what people in the human abduction syndrome talk about in their own interactions with other intelligences, being shown how the pyramids were built with some sort of neutralizing gravity technology, and that there was a period that might have been for 100, 200 million years. There were no standing up Homo erectus primates or any other. This is like there were competing civilizations, highly advanced, on this planet millions of years ago. And as a teacher, whether I was in grade school or junior high, high school, or college, I think that the way I would approach it is that over the last 12,000 years, because now we have Göbekli Tepe in southern Turkey near the Syrian border, and it's been carbon dated at 12,000 years, and it has some of the same glyphs that were found in Samaria and Egypt 5,000 years ago. But Göbekli Tepe pushes the date back twice as old, and here are some of the same glyphs and the same use of limestone. And that I would say, let's look at what has been found on our planet in the last 20 years that changes all of our old Oxford University, Harvard University, Yale University definitions of timeline. And once you start looking at the timeline, and when there have been species that have come in and out and in and out, like the dinosaurs go out 65, 66 million years ago, and what comes next, mammals, and then evolution. You put an evolutionary timeline, and you look at catastrophes and changes in climate. And then you run also a timeline having to do with what whistleblowers and people in the abduction syndrome and others like Zecharia Sitchin, allegedly translating cuneiform, what they put on this timeline. And you start seeing sort of a pattern, and then you combine that with the reporting from my work and others that non-human or extraterrestrial or other dimensional or even time travelers or all of the above have been interacting with this solar system and this planet and this Milky Way galaxy long, long before Homo erectus stood up in Africa 2 million years ago. And if you approach everything sort of from taking what the evolving facts are and how the dates are pushing back, and more is coming in that the Sphinx could be 40,000 years old. And if so, that would have been as old as the timeline crossing between Neanderthal going out and Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien coming in. And then you combine that with that amazing statement that I read on April 9, 1983 at Kirtland Air Force Base here in Albuquerque. Extraterrestrial biological entities manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapien. All questions and mysteries about the evolution of Homo sapien on this planet have been answered, and that project is closed. We were manipulated by other intelligences who have mixed and matched genes. Does that make us less? No. Does it make even more reason for us to understand what we are and what intelligences competing with each other, mixed and matched genes on this planet, and we are one of the end products that is evolving and challenged and challenging to ourselves and to whatever it is that still interacts with this planet. And what do you think teaching in any class that you are familiar with, the person asking this is a teacher, wouldn't students be exercised and excited by coming into their ancient history with a fresh new lens that bridges to today and the fact that we are now going to start moving out into our own solar system and be on Mars if Elon Musk is successful in another 4 to 5 years. So I hope that teachers everywhere start wanting to report the real truth and doing it by opening up ancient history. Another question.
We have a viewer who brought up that once before you spoke on timeline wars, and he's hoping that you could possibly go further into revealing what you know, and he also wants to know, could we possibly be in the middle of one now?
It is
and he has a third question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Says, if so, what does that say about our present reality? Now, it's a lot there, but
it is a really fair and excellent question. Behind the scenes of my computer, I am working on something directly on that line to share in an upcoming live stream. And the work that I'm doing is actually going to evolve out of a document that I have. So I'm going to have something that will be on paper that has emerged, but goes right to the heart of. Jacques Vallée long ago was famous for saying, we can't be just dealing with extraterrestrials from another planet in another solar system coming in craft, and let's say that they're 10 light years from Earth. He used to ask, how could all of the UFO sightings, hundreds and hundreds a year, he said, they can't be commuting. That was basically his bottom line. We're dealing with something else, because things that are light years away, and we're talking about discussions that go back into the 60s and the 70s, and today we now know that our government probably already has the ability to move point to point. In my Antarctica documentary, Spartan 1 talks about his first-hand knowledge of the portals that we have been able to build on this planet in collaboration with what he says are humanoids that are taller than humans, don't have hair, but they're basically humans, or we are the echo of them, and that he was briefed. He had photographs, he saw photographs of them, and briefed about how they move point to point in this universe. Something that if we humans are doing it, we are doing it in conjunction with advanced intelligences and advanced technologies who know how to bend space and time point to point. And if Jacques' question 30 or 40 years ago ties into everything that is beginning to open up about other dimensions, we're a holographic universe, really serious physicists are working on this question because of things that they keep finding and puzzles. It isn't settled yet. But if it were a holographic universe, then the issue of beings coming here from another dimension, the fascinating question would be, why? Which dimension would have the ability to project this universe in the first place? And if they are that vast in knowledge and ability, would they come into this universe like scientists in a lab to check on what they had been doing for the last 13.8 billion light years in this particular universe? Or would they send in really sophisticated AI from whatever dimension they're in, and that is what we would have been experiencing for thousands of millions of years? The AI probe, the AI monitors from another dimension that's incomprehensible. I'm going to do a live stream upcoming from this document into this, we'll call this the big picture, with some specifics. And then I'm going to talk to you about what a physicist told me about what he was briefed in relationship to this XYZ matter world, this universe, that there is another dimension. And this was so fascinating. He said, think of a suit jacket, and our universe is the outside fabric, and that there's another dimension that is the lining. And he said that he had worked on a project trying to understand how would we go from the jacket cloth into the lining of a dimension that lined this matter world. And if the lining intelligence is responsible for our matter universe, would we ever be able to access and communicate directly with that which lines our universe? These are real discussions that are going on with real math, real pieces of paper. And so thank you for your question that is provoking, that I am working on something like that, and that when I do that show, please keep coming and tell Peggy that after I do that show, which I will try to do in the next month or so, that we'll come back to your question and anybody else's questions, because I personally think that dark matter, dark energy, astral plane, holographic universe, projections they've been in the human abduction syndrome in sort of odd pieces for a long time. Michael Talbot's The Holographic Universe, downloaded from ETs, according to Bud Hopkins. But we humans, we are so matter bound, everything that we relate to, until we start getting pushed to think about what happens when you go out of body as a child or as an adult. What does happen at the moment of death when people in a car crash have come right above, and that part is as left brain, analytical, aware, out as it was in the container body. So I think personally this is part and parcel of every single thing that Jacques Vallée and Whitley Strieber and Bud Hopkins and I and others who for a long time have had conversations. It always seems to keep evolving toward other dimensions, other timelines, moving point to point, and that statement in the implicate order, all mass is frozen light. We're back to light. That may be the fabric of everything. Do we have time for one more?
We do. Somebody would like to know, what similarities are often noted from abduction cases, and what strings them all together that you would know that's exactly what happened there?
Common denominators in the human abduction cases. Common denominators. I think that's what they're asking. What would be common denominator from case to case?
I think that would be a good way to say it, yeah.
There are so many that when I do interviews, and I'm now getting up to, I think, 1,700 that I've done with people in the human abduction syndrome, that I'm always listening for keywords. One of them is, I felt like I split in two. When you hear that, that is one of the common denominators of something happening to the consciousness of a human during an abduction with the non-humans, that quite often they sense that their body is in the car or by the house or wherever it is, but that the beings have taken this other part, the one goes out of body, perhaps related also at the moment of death, the recycling of souls. There seems to be a great deal of interest by advanced intelligences in that animus that I think of as our soul. There's another category that is such a common denominator that here are some of my first questions to people when I'm just trying to get a feel. When you were a child, maybe even in a crib, do you remember ever seeing a light in your closet? Some people will answer yes, and there was buzzing, and that would have been a second question if they didn't fill it in. Children starting like at around age 4 is probably the most average age of memory. Light in the closet, a buzzing sound, they'll often say it's like bees. The child, as they grow, they may actually feel anxiety about going to bed, but they don't know why, and parents don't understand. Some children will say, that light that went around my room was a friend. Others will be afraid, but it's the lights, little orbs, those are also common denominators. When you get to puberty, the common denominator will be something associated with a memory. Sometimes it's traumatic and sometimes not, but it's the same subject matter. A memory that has something to do with probing in the body, probing body orifices that can start with the mouth or the ears and then go into genitals and other areas of the body. There's argument that we are dealing with like doctors, so that interactions with the body are part of a genetic program, a laboratory, an experiment, that there is no desire by the other intelligences to hurt humans or to do anything except what their program is. So there's a whole huge area that when you follow people through from childhood up into puberty and on, that you get into this area that seems to relate to the harvesting of sperm, the harvesting of eggs, introductions to hybrids that are babies and children. And these words that I'm saying are an answer to, are there common denominators? It sounds so dry. It sounds so like there actually is all this organization, and that's not the case. It's that there are these common pieces, but in the richness of the human interaction with other intelligences, it is far-ranging, and it's only these pieces that do seem to echo and repeat over and over in most, not all at the same time, but some pieces will be found in almost any person that you are talking with who has had a life of interaction with another intelligence. And here, this is the kicker to it all, that even though there are all of these similar patterns, the one question that you could ask 1,700 people in the abduction syndrome: what do you think the true agenda of the competing non-humans are? And the vast majority will say, I don't really know. Isn't that a paradox? That the very people in the abduction syndrome who would, out of a planet of 7.6 billion, maybe 3 million are in this category. They would have had telepathic downloads. They would have been shown symbols. They would have been shown movies. As one man said to me, I know they answered every question I had, but Linda, if God asked me, I would never be able to repeat what came into my mind so rapidly as movies and content answering I knew, but I couldn't remember. I couldn't absorb. There's a disconnect between having experiences and then being able to understand the experiences in terms of communication. There's a disconnect. In that disconnect is this mystery that you and I and all of us who are coming to the live streams and who are reading my books and seeing my documentaries, in that disconnect is the huge, if there were competing civilizations on this planet 270 million years ago, and they built the pyramids, and they had worldwide global communication, and they had worldwide energy. Where did they go? I mean, why are they not still here? Why did we not come into evolution when the pyramids were viable, when there were incredible technologies and all kinds of entities? Why did they go underground, away, and we are left as the stewards in the Garden of Eden? And why in the Garden of Eden, in Genesis, why was the teacher of Adam and Eve portrayed, described as a reptile? That is another one of the most puzzling aspects of our history. Somehow we were set in motion, and there may have been teachers of a variety, but it was almost as if Homo sapiens, sapien, this last standing up model, was to set forth, go forth on this big, beautiful, watery planet and deliberately never, ever know anything about the source, about the lights, about the beams, all of the technologies that have been portrayed on this planet as something related to spiritual intervention. I profoundly feel connected to a divine field. And I think that perhaps one of the keenest observations about what this whole universe could be made for, that then might explain why standing up primates would be set in motion, but never to know their makers, never to know the truth until when. And that is the physicist who said, I am convinced that we're in a holographic universe. I'm convinced that it was created by something else. And I'm convinced that it is an entropy reduction trainer for souls. What that doesn't answer is which dimension, which timeline would have a reason to create an entropy reduction trainer for souls. And that, to me, is one of the most profound questions. It is, it provokes me constantly to keep learning more, just that much. And so I hope tonight, in sharing some of these common denominators, that some of you will begin to see that there are patterns, and that in the patterns of all of us around the whole world, if every human were exposed to the same common denominators that are affecting some of our fellow humans, and realize it is because of interactions by other intelligences, and that we humans should be at this point starting to go out into space on our own, I think we could stand up in front of some of these intelligences and say, don't you now owe us the truth? So, Earthfiles, a place where I'm always struggling for facts and truth, as difficult as they are, and love all of you who keep coming with some of the most amazing letters and emails about your own interactions with high strangeness and your own journeys trying to understand the world as you are in it. Go subscribe. Get everybody you can to subscribe so we can keep doing Earthfiles in these fascinating subjects And once that headline breaks, we're not alone in this universe, and here are the reasons why. I know this doesn't seem possible, but I think when that headline breaks, we will have 1,000 more subjects to talk about at the Earthfiles live stream. So thank you. See you next week.